Welcome back, campers.
That was Genevieve.
That was Caitlin.
And you have arrived at Camping is Canceled. Today, we are diving into the much anticipated part 3, and the final part, of the infamous Mainline Murders case. If you're new here, part 1 is episode 119, and part 2 is episode 122. And for sweet, sweet baby Jesus' sake, do not listen any further here if you don't have those episodes already under your belt.
Please.
And as Jen so unkindly likes to do to us, we finish part 2 on a cliffhanger. So without further ado, let's plunge right back into the twisted story of the murders of Karen, Michael, and Susan Reinert. Lights out, campers.
Oh man, the mountains call my number one. I'm just a life-size lottery ticket in the hand of the one.
On Friday, June 22nd, 1979, Upper Marion High teacher Vince Valaitis could not get the ominous sentence that Bill Bradfield had said to him out of his head. Vince, J. Smith, is going to kill Susan Reinert. But Bill had gravely instructed Vince not to take anything Bill had confided in him about J. Smith to the police, or both Vince and Bill's lives would be in danger. Vince thought his dear friend Bill was letting himself get too entrenched in helping their disgraced former principal with all of his legal troubles. There was no way Dr. J was a mafia hitman chopping up bodies and stuffing them into the high school's trash bins. Clearly, Vince thought, the drastic way Dr. Smith's life had been turned upside down with the disappearance of his daughter and his wife's cancer diagnosis, and now with facing prison time for theft, his marijuana-soaked brain was beginning to crack under the stress. And maybe Bill was too. That's a lot.
Yeah. It's enough to make anybody get a little kooky.
It's enough to give Vince the benefit of the doubt for believing all of this.
Absolutely. And in my reading about this case, Vince Valaitis is described as somebody who grew up it's almost insulting the degree to which they call him naive, but that he was very much somebody that Bill Bradfield would have zoned in on as being able to befriend and manipulate and just kind of bring into his web. So anything that Bill told him, he's just gonna eat it up with a spoon.
Yeah.
Not because he's not a stupid person, because like he's teaches at the school and stuff like that, but
No.
he hasn't had to be cynical about people.
I mean, and also his boss, the principal, did get charged with things that it's like, that changes your point of view.
Yeah.
And when he's not there to defend what's being said against him.
And this is a completely different time from what we're used to when
That's true.
now we're just true crime all the time. The documentaries, the TikToks, everything is
Everybody
a case.
has a digital footprint now. You can just Google shit.
Yeah, and you have that at least I do, in your mind all the time, thinking about things that maybe are fishy or...
Yeah. And I know it's easier for us to sit here and look at it all and be like, you're naive.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have believed that. But how much crap have I believed?
Oh, 1,000%. Yeah, so I can't really blame Vince beyond, like Susan Reinert, just maybe being a little gullible.
But a perfect victim for a person like Bill. As Bill told Vince, he had taken to following Dr. Smith in his car to make sure that he wasn't hanging around Susan Reinert's place, and was so concerned about her well-being that he would park his car across the street and keep watch over her house for hours until he could no longer hold his eyes open. This was purely out of friendly concern, of course. Bill wasn't interested in Susan Reinert romantically at all. He even called her a, quote, a mousy little woman to Vince.
Shut up, Bill, you ugly. I see you for you truly are, which is ugly.
saw your face as Amanda Bynes.
Thank you.
Oh my goodness.
How insulting, though, to be called mousy. That's just an insulting word. It's not meant to be a cute or endearing thing. It's meant to be like...
Oh, it's a dig.
Yeah. That they're like
he's basically calling her like weak and stupid and
undesirable.
Or like prey.
Ugh.
At least from his vantage point. The way he's saying it. And like, oh, no romantic feelings at all.
Mm-hmm.
Fuck off. Ugh. But, yeah, he couldn't help feeling sorry for her, even though it was very annoying how much she kept throwing herself at him and begging him to make love to her.
Okay.
We just need a line of shirts that say shut up and then it's the names.
Insert the piece of shit of the week.
Yeah. Or like we leave it open and you can Sharpie your own like man's name on there.
Or we just embroider the name. So we just get like a running list of names. So it's like shut up. Bill, Dennis, Israel, Ed.
So many.
Oh my God. Who was the one that, oh my God, the submarine person? You know who I'm talking about.
I cannot think of his name.
I see their faces.
Yes.
Just shut up.
Just shut up. Shut up. But Bill told Vence it was out of the question to tell Susan Reinert any of this. It would end up just putting her even more at risk if Jay found out. Vence actually lived in an apartment downstairs from Bill and Susan Myers, and before everything had happened with Dr. Smith, the three colleagues and another young substitute teacher at Upper Marion, a former student of Bill's named Chris Pappas, would spend long evenings cooking dinner and discussing books and philosophy all together at Bill and Susan's place. To Vence and Chris, Bill Bradfield was an extremely thoughtful, empathetic, and generous person. No wonder he felt bad for the disgraced Dr. Smith and been sucked into his orbit. No wonder a lonely single mom like Susan Reinert had misinterpreted his desire to help out as a romantic interest. Bill would reassure Vence that it was only for a few more weeks that he had to monitor Dr. Smith's threatening behaviors until his sentencing hearing. But Vence's concern for his friend mounted every time that Bill would knock on his door early in the morning, looking pale and absolutely haggard, and would tell Vence that he'd been up the entire night trying to keep Dr. Smith under control. This went on for 9 months.
That's a long dang time.
That's unhinged.
It really is. And when you think about how long 9 months is versus, let's just say this was going on for a week or two leading up to Susan Reinert's murder, it would be a lot easier, I think, to dismiss Dr. Smith as actually being capable of murdering her. Whereas if this is genuinely happening for months on end, of course the people that Bill Bradfield is confiding in are going to be like, holy shit, this person is messed up, or there's some real concern there.
And he's not just saying it, he's acting it out.
Yeah.
He's showing up early in the morning looking disheveled. And like, I know where I stand in this and whatnot. To me, it's like Bill believes what he is saying, and it's, or at least he's trying to believe what he's saying.
Yeah.
It's just very... Ugh.
Whatever he's doing, he's playing a long game.
That's too much playing for me.
It is.
Vence told himself that once Dr. Smith was safely behind bars, the summer of 1979 would be the perfect reset for everyone. Bill had enrolled in classes to pursue his second master's degree at St. John's College, way out in Santa Fe, New Mexico, along with Chris Pappas. Ironically, this just makes me laugh with, like, rage.
Yeah.
So, ironically, the courses were during the same time that Bill had promised Susan Reinert he'd marry her in England.
And she's telling everybody at school and showing them the ring and being like, oh, we're getting married, and telling the kids that they're all going to go to England together. And Bill told them they were going to get a van and drive around and see the country. And meanwhile,
Psycho.
he's just enrolled in these classes in the States.
Vince had taken a summer job working on trucks, and both he and Susan Myers were relieved that the drama with Dr. Smith was nearly at an end.
And I would be as well. Susan Myers is probably like, thank God, get out of my sight for a while.
Goodness.
And now, dear campers, it's time we talk about the most critical 72 hours of this story. The final hours leading up to the moment that Susan Reinert's unclothed body was found stuffed in the wheel well of her own car in a hotel parking lot, and what would take months of relentless detective work to later piece together. During the wee hours of the morning on Friday, June 22nd, 1979, Susan Myers stirred in her sleep because she heard a Bill Bradfield heading out their door. She wasn't sure of the exact time, just that it was very early, and Bill had made no mention of what he was doing. And if you remember from part 2, we talked about how he had started doing this a lot, just getting up and leaving at all hours of the night. He would have to be back at some point that same day, though, because she and Bill, along with Vince Valaitis and Chris Pappas, were supposed to be driving down to Cape May all together for that weekend. Bill told Susan Myers that he'd booked them 2 rooms at his favorite spot, the Heirloom boarding house. And even though a part of Susan wished it was just her and Bill going, she did like Chris and Vince, so it should be a good time. And Caitlin, Susan Myers is another woman who, without a doubt, believed that Bill Bradfield, despite their issues and her even leaving at times and coming back, she would later tell police that it was during the times when she would go down to Cape May with Bill, just the 2 of them, and she said that he made her feel like there was no one else in the world more important to him than her. And they talked about the life that they were building together, the children they were going to have together. And it was those times that she would think about whenever things would be rocky with them. And she'd be like, well, he's said all these things to me and been this way with me, you know, the breadcrumbing and the love bombing before he would pull away again. And so,
to give her also benefit of the doubt, she seems to be the one, though, that he's continuously stuck with.
Yeah.
And like, she knows of the other, she at least knows of Susan Reinert, and she's still sticking with him.
Yep. And she hates Susan Reinert. But I have no doubt that Bill spun things to make it be like, well, she fully pursued me and she won't leave me alone and blah, 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 which would also explain why Susan Myers took a pop at her that one day, because she's like, back off, bitch. Meanwhile, Susan Reinert's over here thinking, that's my Bill. He told me you were breaking up.
There is not a single man on planet Earth worth that drama. No woman, no man, nothing.
Hell no. Certainly not.
Gosh.
So, yeah, Susan Myers is like, okay, we'll all go down to the shore together. It'll be a good time. Now, what Bill didn't tell Susan Myers was that he had already booked the rooms for them when he was in Cape May already that week on Tuesday with one of the other many loves of his life, Joanne Aitken. Atkin. I don't know if it's Aitken or Atkin. It doesn't really matter. Another Joanne. We talked about her in part 2.
Gosh.
Bill told the owner of the Heirloom Inn that he and his friends would not be arriving until very late the Friday night of June 22nd, and to please leave the rooms unlocked with the keys inside the rooms for them. So, on that Friday at approximately 11 a.m., the phone rang at the home of Chris Pappas. it was Bill, and he asked Chris if he could help him out with something. A few minutes later, Chris found himself standing in front of Bill's open car trunk full of random bags and briefcases, which Bill began to open, revealing wads upon wads of cash. Exactly $28,500 worth of cash. Remember, this is worth well over $200K in today's money. It's a crazy amount of money. Understandably, Chris's eyes popped, and he asked Bill where he had gotten it all, to which Bill just said he'd saved it.
Okay.
Even more cash was stuffed in the glove compartment, and Chris noticed this is just a random fact that's thrown in there, and Chris later told police he saw a large bottle of acid also sitting in the trunk. So,
So are we like talking
Cool.
a vat? Are we talking like
oh, right?
a gallon? Are we talking like a little prescription bottle?
That's what I
Are
want to
we-
know. Just
What type of acid?
yeah, like hydrofluoric
Yeah.
acid, but like the stuff you
Like,
pour
is
in
it
anthills or
bone-melting
like
acid?
ooh, the acid that they pour on the bodies in Breaking Bad to dissolve them. I think that is hydrofluoric acid. But yeah,
Oh my god.
this bottle of acid in the
like
trunk.
not something it's abnormal paired with the cash.
Yeah, abnormal enough that Chris's brain went ping. That's a bottle of acid.
You're an English teacher.
Ugh. Then Bill asked Chris if he would help him wipe down all the money and
No.
count it, purely for Chris's own benefit, of course. The wiping down the money was for Chris's benefit, just in case there was, quote, some sort of investigation. And Chris didn't really question him about this, was just like, okay, yeah, sure, Bill. Then they drove to a bank where Bill placed the money in a deposit box. He asked Chris if he could help keep it safe for him when he was away that summer. And apparently on this safe deposit box, you have to like leave a signature or multiple signatures, like indicating who put the money in or were, I don't know how exactly that works, but I do know that when the money was deposited, there were 3 signatures that were put on the box. One was Bill Bradfield's, one was Chris Pappas's, and another was Wendy Ziegler's.
Okay.
Wendy was another one of the great loves of Bill's life. Now, this point of the story is where things that happen with this $28,000, which does come up later in the story, it is significant, but there's conflicting reports on where at this point the money is being kept. So one version is that Chris and Bill put it in the safe deposit box. That did happen at one point, but there's also a point where Bill goes to a cheap hotel in the days leading up to Susan Reinert's death to spend a day with Wendy Ziegler. And they spend the entire day together in this cheap hotel. And during that time, Bill asks Wendy if she would put a duffel bag that had $25,000 in cash in her closet and hang on to it until he got back from Santa Fe that fall. So that is what's a little weird to me, is that you have one report saying that the money was put in a safe deposit box, but then another saying that Wendy Ziegler was asked to keep it in her closet.
So he didn't have 50,000, split it and gave half.
Correct. So I'm not sure exactly of the timeline, but that $25K was bounced around several times. It's like Bill's going, oh, it'll be fine in the safe deposit box. Oh, wait, maybe no. I think he pulled it right back out.
That makes sense.
I think that he pulled it right back out after he had Chris deposit it with him. And then Chris is thinking that it's in the bank. And then I think he went to the hotel
With Wendy.
with Wendy and gave it to her. Oh, see, I just figured that out
That-
right then.
yeah,
that's what
makes
makes sense
sense.
to me. Now that's not confirmed, but that would, I don't know. That's like why
Well, with
it works. If she was the one who ended up with the money, but it had been in the bank.
Because
I don't know.
That makes sense to me,
Mhm.
though. Like, maybe Chris just got his dates mixed up about the
Mhm.
timing that
Yeah.
Bill brought the money over to clean it. Or even, like, it was immediately, okay, you saw me sign it. It's in the bank. It's not anymore.
Yeah. So either way, on that same Friday, so the one, this very important 72 hours, on this Friday, Bill does spend the vast majority of the day after he sees Chris. He spends the rest of the day in a hotel room with Wendy Ziegler, who later says that she was waiting in the hotel room for him to come and make love to her. Ew. So
My guy must have been a rock star in bed or something.
I mean,
Because there's no way I'm sitting in a nasty ass motel eagerly waiting for anybody.
however long, he probably made her wait there for like well over a day. Anyways, so after their little time together, Bill suddenly to Wendy appeared like he was very lost in thought and very like, I need to talk to you about something, but like, I don't know if I should. And that, Caitlin, allegedly, so Wendy later tells certain individuals, is when he asks her to hold the $25,000 that he has in a duffel bag. And she's like, why? Why? And this is when Bill says to her, and I quote, "Just in case Dr. Smith kills Susan Reinert in the next couple of days."
Guys. It's so cut and dry.
I mean, well, it is, but
it
it's
is
not.
I know.
But, well, his shadiness is cut and dry, though.
Yeah.
His shadiness is very cut and dry. And, and also because Susan Reinert had this silly will in which he was named beneficiary. So he didn't have any reason to think why his money would be frozen, but he also told Wendy that his assets might be frozen if there was an investigation,
So this money is coming from Susan Reinert, from her mom, like her death, and then this will, that the trust that she's putting him on. But then they're not romantically involved.
Yeah.
Oh, he doesn't like,
Yeah.
but she's about to be killed, but like, I just want to make sure I still get my money from her.
Yeah.
I'm not going to help make sure she's still alive, but I somehow know she's going to get killed this week. And we'll find out that she does actually get killed this week.
Yeah.
And her kid, like, it.
And we're sitting here knowing that this is money that he got from Susan Reinert.
And they're not.
None of these people know that because he's telling them it's money that he's
But
scrimped
you're
and
still
saved.
Creepily coming to me with money, asking me to fucking clean it.
Yeah.
And then also telling me, hey, this girl I know and work with is going to be killed this weekend. Like, I saw it. It's a vision in my head. Like, I know.
And I don't know if maybe because of the time that they're in, that it was be more normal for people to hang on to their cash. Because now we're just so like cards, everything,
I would think it was. Because I mean, I know a lot of people of the like older generation, not old, middle old, and then old up, are pretty good
hoarding
at like,
cash.
they like to keep their cash.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's not as weird as it seems to us, but the explanation for why he needs them to hold the
He's
cash
going
is
around it
what's
really
weird.
shady.
Is what's super weird. So, Wendy would later tell police that she and Bill spent the entire afternoon together in that hotel room and that they didn't part ways until 8 p.m. when Bill dropped Wendy off at the house of one of her girlfriends to stay the night with her. Mind you, Caitlin, he's staying in a hotel room with this bitch until 8 p.m. and he's supposed to be heading down to the shore, which is like 3 hours away, with 3 other people that same day. So that's too much in one day. For the next 3 hours after Bill dropped Wendy off at her friend's house around 8 p.m., Bill Bradfield's actions are completely unaccounted for. But this is what we do know. At approximately 9:20 p.m., Susan Reinert's next-door neighbor saw Sue and her 2 children dash from the front door to Sue's car in the middle of a thunderstorm and drive away. Their final sighting before Michael and Karen would vanish and Susan's body would be found 3 days later. So, after this 3-hour unaccounted for window, at 11 p.m., Bill Bradfield showed back up at his and Susan Myers' place, where Susan Myers and Vince Valaitis were patiently waiting.
I would have been unpacked, well into sleep.
Yeah.
A note saying, do not fucking talk to me, disturb me, touch me, leave me alone. Enjoy your little trip by yourself.
Exactly. Oh, but Caitlin, Bill seemed uncharacteristically upset and irritated with how slow they were being. No sooner had he walked in than he was hurrying them out the door and into the car. Like, hurry up, you guys. We gotta get going. We're late. Like, okay. If you've ever been in a situation like that with somebody, it pisses me off to no
I'm telling
end.
you, I would not leave.
Oh.
Like the audacity.
The secondhand rage.
Oh, I really wanted to go on this trip, but now that I know it's pissing you off after you pissed me off, it's more fun to sit here.
So from there,
Ooh.
they drove to pick up Chris Pappas and began the 3-ish hour car ride down to Cape May. Bill appeared exhausted and kept dozing off in the back seat. But after a while, he started earnestly talking once again about his favorite subject to Vince. How worried he was that this was the weekend Dr. Smith was going to kill Susan Reinert. In fact, it had taken Bill so long to get back to his place that night to meet up with the rest of them because he'd been driving behind Dr. Smith while Dr. Smith circled Susan Reinert's block 14 times until he'd eventually lost Dr. Smith in that flash, thunderstorm, hailstorm and been forced to give up the chase. Just had to give it up, Caitlin, and go on a weekend trip.
I'm biting my tongue so hard. Finally, around 3 a.m. on Saturday, June 23rd, the 4 travelers arrived in Cape May. They stopped for a meal at a 24-hour diner called the Lobster Pot, then headed to the Heirloom Inn around 4:15 a.m. Good God. I'm old. That sounds horrible.
Like hell.
That sounds horrible.
You leave to go on a trip at almost midnight. In the middle of the night, you get there. You haven't slept.
Ugh.
No.
So they arrive at 4:15 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
After they had already said, hey, we're going to be really late into the night, not early morning.
Yeah.
So, only to find that the 2 rooms Bill Bradfield had booked were occupied. And the front desk was closed for the night. Utterly exhausted, Bill and Vince passed out in the hall, but Susan and Chris decided to go out for a walk until the inn's owners eventually showed up. Bill and Sue got a room together, and Vince and Chris had one. Everyone spent the day relaxing in their rooms until they all went out for dinner together that evening. And then afterwards, Bill was insistent that Vince go with him to a nearby Catholic church to light candles and pray for Susan Reinert.
What in the damn hell? This is overkill at this point.
It's
Pardon the pun.
It's like laughable.
Jeez.
It's so cut and dry the way he's acting.
Yeah.
And he's at least somewhat manic.
It does seem like he's being kind of, I don't know if scattered is the right word, but something is just off.
Mm-hmm.
But also, Vince Valaitis was a very, very devout Catholic.
Mm-hmm.
And so I could also see where Bill's like, Vince, kind of playing on knowing that to Vince, that's going to be like, oh, look at this good person that Bill is, that he wants to go pray for this woman he's worried about.
Yep.
You know?
Yeah.
That it's just yet another manipulation tactic. Ugh.
So the following morning, Bill asked Vince to go with him to Mass, and again, they both lit candles for Susan Reinert. Later that day, Bill asked Chris to place a phone call to Wendy Ziegler, his wifey, Wendelin, and ask her if anything, quote, newsworthy had occurred. Hoo, hoo, hoo. Chris Pappas may not have been the brightest bulb in the box, but he did manage to pick up that the newsworthy info Bill was fishing for was anything to do with Susan Reinert. But no, there wasn't anything. The rest of the weekend passed uneventfully, with Bill insisting that everyone make sure to get up and keep the receipts for anything they bought, down to a cup of coffee. It was now Monday, June 25th, and time for the four friends to head back to Upper Marion. Bill and Chris had to make a flight that evening from Philadelphia to Santa Fe to start their summer college program. But before they hit the road, Bill asked Chris if he would help him deep clean out his car. Chris saw Bill place various random papers and documents into an envelope and seal it. Then Bill asked the inn's proprietor, a woman named Marion Taylor, to give him a receipt that included Friday night as part of their stay, even though they didn't get into their rooms until Saturday morning. Marion thought this was odd, but she just teased Bill about it and said sure, she'd put Friday on the receipt, but she was only going to charge him for the nights he actually spent in the rooms. She figured it was for his taxes or something.
Okay. I don't
know.
Maybe he's going to write it off as a business expense somehow.
I guess,
but he didn't even have to pay. I don't know.
Yeah.
Doesn't make sense.
I guess, like, I'm not going to question. I'm not going to immediately think you're doing it for an alibi.
Yeah, you're just like, okay, whatever.
You're weird, but okay. It also stuck in her memory that when Bill had come down that previous Tuesday to book the rooms for the weekend, that was the very first time he'd ever made a reservation ahead of time, even though he'd stayed at the Heirloom Inn multiple times. So many patterns are forming and changing.
Yeah.
On the drive back, Bill directed them to stop at a random apartment complex and asked Chris if he'd throw the sealed envelope of documents into its dumpster.
Why not just burn it?
I swear every time somebody, like, tries to outsmart, like, killing, they just dumb themselves down.
Yeah, like, what's wrong with burning things? I don't know.
I like fire.
You're at
and
the...
that's how we announce we're arsonists. We're the dummies.
I like fire.
Oh, gosh.
But really, though, it's just weird. I don't know.
You could have left it in any trash can along the way. Like, just like you stop for gas and throw it away.
Yeah.
Like, the way he's getting everyone involved in little things is so fishy.
And passing things off. But it's dumb stuff. Like, why couldn't he have called Wendy and asked if anything newsworthy had happened?
He had to take Vince to go light a candle with him. And he had to go again the second day.
Yeah, it makes me wonder what Susan Myers was. She was probably just, like, ignoring disassociated.
Honestly,
like,
probably.
Leave me alone. She was that friend who didn't make an appearance until the very end of the trip because she's like, I'm actually here to relax.
I'm
Leave
here
me
for
alone.
me. I don't really care about y'all.
Yeah.
So yeah, just a random dumpster at an apartment complex. That evening, after they'd all parted ways, Bill packed for Santa Fe and drove to Philadelphia, where another of his loves, Joanne Atkin, was waiting for him at a hotel. I am exhausted.
No wonder Bill be looking haggard and exhausted.
You gotta remember all these different names, all these different hotels.
And you don't have a notes app to keep track of it all.
Exactly.
No Google Calendar
back then.
Yeah, no Google reminders, nothing.
Gosh. From there, Joanne went with Bill to the airport, where he got on a plane with Chris Pappas and flew to New Mexico. Joanne Atkin, at Bill's Bradfield's request, then drove Bill's car all the way to Santa Fe to join him there for the summer.
Like,
You could have planned that out to make a road trip with her. The fact that you're taking the plane and making me drive your car.
ugh.
You're just being used, babe.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh, honey, would you drive this car down for me? But also, Caitlin, I think it's because he needed to be gone.
Gone. Yeah.
You know, he just needed to be literally thousands of miles away as quickly as possible. Or there was some reason why he didn't leave earlier. Like, why couldn't he have started his road trip down a little earlier and arrived
Too
on time?
suspicious.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now, on Tuesday, June 26, Vince Valaitis was at his job with a truck supplier when a phone call came in for him. It was Susan Myers, and what she said next made Vince feel like he was going to pass out. Susan Reinert's body had been found stuffed in a car trunk in Harrisburg. Vince was so stunned he couldn't even respond at first, and he slumped down, clutching the telephone and rocking back and forth.
Ugh.
Bill had been right. Vince, a devout Catholic, could barely manage to cross himself and whisper back to Susan, "Oh no, God help us all." Vince's initial paralyzed state suddenly transformed into an overwhelming urgency to reach Bill Bradfield and tell him he was right. In a daze, he raced to Sue and Bill's apartment, where Sue Myers was already on the phone with Bill. She waved Vince in and handed him the phone. Vince would later say that Bill's voice sounded extremely calm and, honestly, a little bit cold and distant. All he said to Vince was, quote, "I've already had 2 phone calls about the tragedy. Don't talk to the police. Don't tell them anything at all. Don't even mention Dr. Smith's name over the phone. If you do, you'll put me in the electric chair." My ass would be calling 911.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. So quick.
Immediate 911.
Vince was stunned. Just 2 days prior, when they'd all pulled in the driveway from Cape May, Bill had run inside and said he needed to call Dr. Smith's lawyer. When he hung up the phone, he appeared almost giddy and broke down crying. What?
Yeah.
Everyone had stood around, unsure of what to do, but after a few minutes, Bill had looked up through his tears and said, "Thank God it's over. Smith's in jail. I saved that fucking woman's life." Maybe, Vince thought, he was just in shock and that's why he sounded so cold. Now, one of these other calls Bill said he'd received was from a close friend of Susan Reinert's, a woman named Sharon Lee. Sharon would later say that Bill spent their call talking very softly, like he was afraid for anyone to hear him. Like he'd said to Vince, Bill told Sharon he'd heard of the tragedy, but then he asked her for the specific details of what she knew, and Sharon told him. She asked Bill if he had had any idea what Susan would have been doing in Harrisburg where her body was found. Because, remember, Harrisburg was on the opposite side from the conference Susan was supposed to be attending. But Bill said he had no idea. He hadn't even been planning to see or speak to Susan until he was back from Santa Fe in September. This shocked Sharon, because weren't they taking this big trip to England to, I don't know, get married, as Susan had told everybody?
Yeah.
At the mention of this, Bill seemed genuinely surprised. Why, no, he made no such promises to Susan. She'd been trying to pursue him, but he'd consistently turned her down. This didn't sit right with Sharon, but she continued to press Bill, asking if he had any idea where Karen and Michael were. But it was like Bill was in a daze, and he just mumbled back, "Oh, the children? How old were they?" This was immediate red flags for Sharon, because she'd literally been at Susan's house when Bill was there, and he seemed, I don't know, really close with them.
Yeah, like that he was kind of being a stepfatherly
Yeah,
type figure.
Because he was.
Yeah, he was over
with
there all
this
the
family.
time. Yeah.
Like, the kids would literally sit on his lap, and he'd read to them and cuddle them.
Oh. That's even mentioned in one of the letters that Susan had written to Bill when he was trying to push her away, or they were in a weird on again, off again phase. She's saying that she wants him to come over more because how much the kids love him and how much Karen especially needed his fatherly attention. And it's just so sad. Then for him to be like, how old were they?
Yeah, completely dismissing them,
Yeah.
acting as if he knows nothing about them.
Like he's met them one time at the grocery store.
Now, here he was acting like they were minor acquaintances, and that word, were, especially alarmed her. Past tense, huh?
Yeah. So like we mentioned way back at the start of this story, Bill Bradfield was the first name given to detectives by Sue's ex-husband, Ken Reinert. As is so often the case in these types of murders, the husband or ex did it. But this was one of those rare cases where right off the bat, Ken was so visibly broken and in shock over Susan's murder and his own children's disappearance that law enforcement collectively were like, oh, this poor SOB had nothing to do with this. That's pretty intense for them to be like,
to immediately.
Yeah, to just get that gut feeling. But it's a good thing that they went with their gut. Bill Bradfield, however, another story. Ken was ready with an explanation of how Bill had swooped in and demolished what he thought was a perfect marriage. Plus, when police learned about that $700,000 worth of insurance policies Susan had taken out just 2 months before her death, with the sole beneficiary and intended husband being yours truly, a murder motive was looking pretty strong. But now they had to find evidence. By now it had been 8 days since Susan's body had been found. And in spite of their very strong hunch, and what we can only imagine was a strong desire to punch a Bill in the face, police had no actual hard evidence linking Bill to Sue's murder or any crime for that matter. Now enter again our favorite bestie, Pat Schur, Sue's friend, the one who had confronted Bill about, Bill, you need to pick one Susan. And then Bill was like, actually, I don't really love either of them. Let's make out. Pat sat in her house, racking her brain for any ominous foreshadowing that she could pinpoint from her and Susan's conversations in the months leading up to her murder, when it hit her. What had happened to that $25,000 of cash that Susan had inherited from her mom? The cash she told Pat she'd taken out of the bank and given all of to Bill Bradfield so he could invest it in a trust for Karen and Michael. And that diamond engagement ring she'd given him to have reset. Pat ran to her phone and dialed police. Bill, for his own part, told law enforcement he would not be answering any questions and to speak to him only through his lawyer. Can't fault him for this here because lawyer up, lawyer up, lawyer up.
Yes.
But also, Bill, fuck you. He also audibly gasped in shock, Caitlin, when a reporter got a hold of him and asked if he'd known that he'd been named the sole beneficiary of upwards of $1 million in Susan's life insurance. He literally said, "You're kidding." She did what? My God, I just can't believe it. I have no idea how she could have taken out that much insurance. I still don't know if the policies really exist. Bill did say one thing about Susan's murder to Vince, which was that actually, after all of these 9 months, Caitlin, of him being like, Jay Smith is crazy, he's going to kill Susan, actually, maybe there's one other person who could have killed her. A black man she briefly dated from Parents Without Partners named Alex.
Shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
Bill.
Yeah, exactly. by the way, Alex didn't exist. Oh, and Bill said that he would be remaining in Santa Fe until that fall because his studies were now his sole focus. Okay. Wherever that 25K was, that the cops had just been told about by, was it, did I say Sharon or Pat Shore? No, Pat Shore. They were like, let's put a pin in that because that seems a little sus. Now, other than Pat just dropping them that tip, they didn't have like any paper trail, anything, so it's just kind of like little leads and breadcrumbs they're being given at this point, but they put a pin in it because it was something, and right now they had nothing.
Yeah.
Plus, meanwhile, there was something far more important that needed to be found besides money, and that was the kids. Every day that passed was turning up no sign of Karen or Michael, and dozens of local and state police, even reporters, were working around the clock, searching every feasible area in Chester County, wooded areas, landfills, orchards, and even when they were off the clock, they would spend their time just walking through the woods, going so far as to dig shallow graves anywhere that the earth looked remotely disturbed. It was easily the largest missing children search in Pennsylvania history. Nobody could say that no stone left unturned. They were going over this area with a fine-tooth comb. The children's faces were all over national news, and police went on foot with their pictures all over Cape May and Chester County, asking locals if they recognized the kids. Poor Ken Reinert and his parents basically lived by the phone hoping for news, and they felt like they were in a horrific nightmare from which they could not wake up. One detective had a literal recurring nightmare of falling into an open grave containing the children's bodies.
Good Lord.
Oh, it's awful. The FBI then expanded their search to include Dr. Smith's missing daughter, Stephanie Hunsberger, because there was a thought, I'm not really sure how this came about, maybe it's just because there was this, like, connection between Bill and Dr. Smith that maybe the children would be with her somehow. I don't know quite how they arrived to it, but again, right now they're grasping, just being like, she's missing, she's an adult, they knew each other, maybe they're with her. But that didn't turn up anything. Then that fall, they had a bit of a surge in hope again when an anonymous tip came in to the editor of the Phoenix evening newspaper that claimed this. This is crazy, Caitlin. So this editor received an anonymous phone tip from a woman who said, quote, "If you want to find the Reinert kids, look behind the White House with the 6 pillars where they hold cult meetings. Look for fresh dirt piles in the area right behind the house." Quote. She also mentioned something about an 8-cornered schoolhouse, and then she just hung up. But the editor was like, I can't quite remember all the details. So then he calls the police and asks for help because he sent out his reporters to find both the school and the schoolhouse, but they couldn't. So the detectives, when they received this call, they remembered that the Philadelphia Daily News had previously run a photograph of Bill Bradfield's apartment building, and that building had 6 pillars. So the detectives were like, well, maybe this woman saw it, and they imagined the rest because, crazy leads come in all the time. But this just shows you how thorough they were being and how they were literally leaving no stone unturned. They sent a team of investigators out to take aerial photos with a helicopter, and then they were able to identify that there was indeed a 8-cornered schoolhouse in the area called the Rock Schoolhouse in Chester County. It had been built in 1818, restored in 1908, had 8 corners, and was approximately 5 miles from Bill Bradfield's 6-pillar apartment house. So 9 state troopers and 3 FBI started basically digging up the ground behind this and all around this abandoned schoolhouse with
Yeah.
shovels and pickaxes, but they found absolutely nothing. That's how desperate they were. But the detectives, I mean, they weren't surprised that they didn't find
Yeah.
anything, but they did make this very telling comment, which was, it would be very stupid for William Bradfield to bury bodies of murdered children right in his own backyard. And I agree with that, but I also think Bill Bradfield is a big of a narcissist to think that he could outsmart.
Yeah.
And killers tend to bury bodies in areas they feel familiar with because they know when people are coming and going, and there's like a element of safety there that they feel. So anyways, that was just an interesting, like, little, not really a sidebar, but just an example of how intently they were looking for these kids.
I mean, obviously it didn't turn up anything, so it was kind of just a red herring.
Mhm.
It is bizarre to me how many people call in tips that are just made up.
Yeah.
It, like,
And
the
that even
hobbies
if
of people.
and that even if it was made up, that there was that level of like the coincidence.
Yeah.
And so
The
I don't
thought
know.
out of it. It's just weird.
Yeah, it is weird. So with no sign of Karen and Michael, and Bill Bradfield off keeping his lips zipped and charming his professors down in Santa Fe and getting straight A's, the police were floundering for leads. But this was not cutting it for a public who wanted answers. So naturally, the press swooped in to pour gasoline on the raging fires of speculation. By now, word had been leaked about that, I'm so sorry we have to say it again, that large rubber dildo that was found in Sue's car. And like a fucked up game of telephone, it led to articles such as this one that was published by the Philadelphia Chronicle. Its title was "Sex Ring Linked to Murder. Swingers Group Probed." Boy, wouldn't that get your attention. And also, what? Swingers Group Probed?
I would be doing a double take.
That's the title of this episode. Swingers Group Probed. Here it goes. State police have uncovered explosive new evidence in the Susan Reinert murder case, linking the Upper Marion teacher to a bizarre sex ring. The Philadelphia Chronicle has learned that Mrs. Reinert's knowledge of a love cult may have been a motive for the slaying. 3 individuals contacted this week by the Chronicle said that between 20 and 30 men and women regularly participated in swinging sessions that included homosexual and sadomasochistic acts. One police source said that Mrs. Reinert may have been killed because she was about to expose the existence of the group and its members, all of whom were reported to be professionals. Not to be outdone, though, the Philadelphia Bulletin upped the ante by adding devil worship into the mix. They said, quote, "Investigators believe Mrs. Reinert may have been stripped, tortured, and sexually assaulted as she lay on a makeshift sacrifice altar during a black mass devil worshipping ceremony." It went on to describe possible cult members as intellectual professionals, not necessarily the types of individuals you would think of as fanatical sex perverts, but they did not blink at using animals for sex exhibitions and encounters. Investigators are not sure whether Susan Reinert was actually a member of the cult or whether she attended the Black Mass rituals and other cult ceremonies out of curiosity, but they were certain Mrs. Reinert knew about the cult and the identity of many of its members.
How stupid and damaging is that?
I know I'm reading it in a stupid voice, but
Well, 'cause
that
it's
is literally how I
funny.
imagine it. It's stupid.
Like, somebody sat down, typed this out, got it approved, and got paid to post this. And all it is falling, like, it's alleging stupidity. If it is true, it's true. But there's nothing pointing to that besides a dildo in her car.
Not a single... like, how did they arrive at that from that? I mean, this was really the beginning of all of the satanic panic cult shit. I literally have a book that came out in 1980 that's called Those Curious New Cults of the 80s that I got at a yard sale. So I was like, oh my God, this is exactly what people were losing their minds over. And so you see just how ridiculous it is.
It's so stupid because you're losing sight that she got in her car with her kids.
Yeah.
Her kids who she could have handed off to their dad.
Yeah.
And she did all this?
Yeah.
And maybe she did, but like it's just so stupid and outlandish with nothing backing it up.
It is. I think that maybe they took and ran a fucking marathon with that one detail about how her hands appeared to have been bound with something that like a chain, and how she had been trying to free herself, which anybody would have done, but there's no evidence whatsoever that it just meant she was restrained and tried to get free, not that she was being sacrificed on a black mass altar. And can you imagine how many stupid tips came in as a result of that?
Oh my God.
Yeah. Just thought you guys would find that interesting. I hate
it.
I hate it, but I love when I get to actually read those articles of what people, when this was unfolding, was reading, because they just had to be in an absolute panic and no idea of what was actually going on.
Ludicrous, Genevieve. Ludicrous. Yeah, so as ludicrous as all of this sounds, somehow, something actually good that came out of it was that rumors of an underground snuff film being sold commercially along with Satan worship and a triple unsolved homicide meant that the long, muscly arm of the FBI got involved. I'll take that, okay?
Yeah.
And with that, they began their own deep dive into every nook and cranny of the case. And what they found was odd, to say the least. Get this. On the very day that Susan Reinert's body was found, Jay Smith was scheduled to turn himself in to begin his 6 to 12 years in federal prison for his drug and weapons charges. The time he was scheduled to arrive was approximately 5 hours after Susan's body was found. But Jay Smith was a full hour late. And the reason he gave was that he'd been, quote, stuck in a gas station line.
Baby, why you getting gas? You going to prison.
Your car don't need gas. Like, honestly, Jen, like, what do you need gas for?
Maybe it was Audie when he left. I want to give him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe he was trying to be a good felon.
Okay.
And needed gas to get to the courthouse.
Oh my gosh. And what gas station besides like a Sam's Club?
Yeah, and a line at the gas station.
I'd be gone. On that day, the motel where Sue was found and the courthouse that Jay turned himself in at were just a few miles apart.
Ooh. I don't like that.
Meanwhile, Bill Bradfield, the intended husband, who had been telling his closest friends for 9 months that he was terrified Dr. Smith was going to kill Susan Reinert, was over 100 miles away, tucked away in a cozy little seaside inn the weekend she disappeared. And just 5 hours before her body was found, he had boarded a 10 p.m. flight to New Mexico. But that wasn't all. A confidential informant shared with the FBI that in Quakertown, Pennsylvania, there was what they referred to as a, quote, wife or girlfriend swapping house, and that she'd seen Dr. J. Smith there on a number of occasions. An unnamed female sex worker shared with the FBI that she'd told one of her clients about her goal of opening her own, quote, massage parlor. I want to guess those included happy endings
Mm-hmm.
with the air quotes around it.
Yes.
So he'd connected her with a friend who could invest in it, Dr. Smith. Smith and the woman had met at a McDonald's
You can get that. Probably was 2 for $1.
You know what?
Breakfast
It probably
biscuits
was.
and coffee.
McDonald's.
And you know Dr. Smith probably had money because he was a cheap ass. So he's like,
Gosh.
take you out for breakfast. We're meeting at McDonald's.
You can get in the dollar menu, babe. The quarter menu. So yeah, they met at McDonald's 3 weeks before Dr. Smith was arrested for stalking a van with all of those guns and drugs in his car. He'd given the woman $800 in cash to get her business going, and he told her not to worry about money because he'd keep helping her out and he'd keep feeding her 25-cent burgers. So. And he only wanted 1/4 of her profits. These stories, if true, certainly add emphasis to Dr. Smith's double life. But swinging and giving a sex worker money are nowhere near the evidence that someone is capable of triple murder. What police learned from Dr. Smith's wife, though, they found even more interesting. Just 2 days after Susan Reinert's body was found, a letter arrived to Mrs. Smith's hospital room where she lay dying of cancer.
That poor lady.
The letter read, "We must clean out 705 totally, Steph. 705 was their street address. We must throw away most of the stuff. I cannot stress the importance of this. Clean out and clean up. Things that must go. Beds and rugs. Every time I walk in that rug, something new pops out of it. I must go. I will write later about disposal. I love you, Jay." Yeah.
As this poor woman is on her deathbed.
And her husband writing a letter. He's also going to jail.
Yeah. Already in jail. The
Gosh.
audacity.
Stephanie Smith immediately gave this letter to police, and a few days later, she passed away. May she rest in peace.
Yeah.
Among her personal effects, police found alarming diary entries where Stephanie wrote that she could sense Jay had a growing contempt for his family. He would call her and their daughters rats and vultures.
No.
And sometimes even threatened to kill and get rid of their daughters, Stephanie and Cher, because Jay said they would, quote, jeopardize his career, no matter where he tried to go.
What? Is it maybe because they were drug users? At least I know Stephanie was. I don't know about Cher, but
to talk about your children like that.
Yeah, that's alarming.
Ew.
Ooh.
Where Stephanie herself was concerned, she was terrified Jay was going to kill her because, quote, she knew too much about his swinging, fucking, and mail fraud. Where'd the mail fraud come from?
That I don't know.
Goodness, this man had a track record.
Oh, maybe she's wrapping in the stuff about the stealing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Something with that.
Yeah. He had
Good
sticky
Lord.
fingers.
He sure did.
More than one reason.
Baby oil.
Expired baby oil for sure.
On numerous occasions, she had caught him peering through the crack in their daughter's bedroom door when she and her husband were being intimate.
Yeah.
No. The way I would have cracked his head with a frying pan. Cast iron frying pan.
And you would have needed to make sure he was finished off because you do not want to have to take care of him after he's a vegetable.
No.
No. You better make it a good crack. But that's
horrible. It's not even scary as much as it is like gut-wrenchingly disgusting
Yeah.
that like you see someone, you see your husband and the father of your daughter preying on his daughter.
Yeah. That's what makes
Ew.
my skin crawl. Like, even the stuff that's the swinging, him having a, personal pleasure device, those kind of things in and of themselves are not indicative of somebody being a criminally deviant personality
No.
or even morally deviant, as long as everybody who you're involved with is like aware
Consensual.
and on board. But that is a level of perverted violation that then we're like, okay, we've crossed over.
Yeah,
Like,
there's
no conversation there to be of like, well, we're in the 70s and 80s. People were more judgy of
No.
swingers. Like, no, you're
This
peeping.
isn't swinging.
No, this is like the first steps
This is
towards
disgusting.
dentist behavior.
He's also already past not the child, God, the animal disgustingness of
Yeah.
those magazines.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about the
I'm sorry.
bestiality.
I'm sorry.
But
I'm sorry.
it's good you brought up because we're getting a picture, like all these pieces coming together.
The
that-
swinging, I don't give a shit about. The
Yeah.
bestiality, the watching
Yeah.
your daughter, no.
And I have seen in other articles that are more sympathetic to Jay Smith of people saying, well, Bill Bradfield just took advantage of a troubled man, making it seem like Jay Smith was entirely a victim. No. Yes, he was a troubled man, but saying troubled man makes it sound like he had something wrong with him that he didn't have control over, you
Exactly.
know, like that he was a vulnerable person
Yeah.
because he had some sort of like mental or physical disability. No,
Not the case.
he was troubled. That's for sure.
Yeah. So, before she died, Stephanie told a reporter that in 27 years of marriage, she felt that she barely knew Jay Smith. And he'd kept a combination padlock on their family's den that he called his office, which he never let anyone go inside. No.
I said den, but also the basement.
Like the basement,
Yeah,
yeah.
it was the basement, yeah.
Police also found a very explicit letter that Dr. Smith had written to a female principal in New Jersey prior to his first arrest. And dear campers, we will spare you on that one. Jen, however, is scarred forever.
And wait, so are you, because I
Yeah,
think I
that's
read
the
it to
one.
you.
Guys.
Are you going to say the one line from it,
Guys.
Caitlin? It's so messed
I'm
up.
so sorry, but all you guys need to know from this letter,
That Jay wrote to this woman.
quote, I will beat your ass instead of fuck it.
No! And I believe that threat was if
That-
she showed to her husband, there was something that he was like, don't do this, or
Don't give your lips to
Yeah.
somebody. Yeah.
Yeah.
That honestly was probably the most PG part of that whole letter.
Yeah.
Disgusting. And I'm laughing. We're laughing because it's
Be-
so uncomfortable. I will beat your ass instead of fuck it. But also, I kind of want that as a bumper sticker. I'm so sorry.
Oh my god.
Oh, Genevieve, I hate you. So let us just say that if you thought nothing could get any worse than Dennis naming his dick Sparky,
Yes,
Yes.
it can. Ugh,
God, sometimes I wish the internet didn't exist.
I know. But just think that people were coming up with this stuff before the internet. And people have been little nasties since the beginning of time. Ugh.
Was it Napoleon that had his wife not wash before he got home? He wrote to her to not wash herself so he could smell
Oh,
her.
no, it was someone like, it wasn't Napoleon, but it was one of those, oh my god, I don't even want to look it up now,
Yeah,
but
it
it
was
was like a
just-
philosopher or poet or somebody like that. I don't
I mean,
know.
allegedly it was to make sure she wasn't cheating, but I've seen
Oh.
some nasty messages from those men back there, like wanting to smell their farts and whatnot.
Ew. And that's where the phrase comes from. Of he just like sitting around smelling his own farts. Because there were people
There are people.
who built the world that literally wrote that.
You don't need the internet to be nasty.
Ugh. So, the week before classes resumed for the September 1979 semester at Upper Marion, Another mob of angry parents gathered at a school board meeting and demanded that the 3 teachers whose names they'd been hearing all summer in the news in connection with Susan Reinert's murder be fired. Bill Bradfield, his live-in girlfriend Susan Myers, and Bill Bradfield's dear friend Vince Valaitis. Legally, much to these parents' disappointment, the school could not just fire 3 teachers who had not, as of now, no one's committed any crime. They are just socially criminals by being associated with a murder victim. And then there's all the Satan cult and, swinger cult
the witch
stuff.
Hunt.
Yeah, so parents are just like, we just want them out of sight, out of mind. We want them gone. So they were not fired, but they were all transferred to the town of Bridgeport to do office work in an abandoned elementary school that was owned by the school district. This was quite a blow for Bill, who had risen from a lowly tenant farmer to the president of Upper Marion's Education Association and its English department. And I don't really care about Bill, but what was especially devastating was that Vince Valaitis just wanted to teach. He just loved teaching English, and he had this really heartbreaking interaction with his boss where he basically cried and begged to not allowed to come back to the classroom.
Yeah.
And he's just like, I don't know why this is happening to me. I had absolutely nothing to do with this. Like, Bill is my friend. And just genuinely was heartbroken. And his boss was like, I'm so sorry. Like, my hands are tied. I'm not going to fire you, but for right now, you can't be around students.
And he didn't do anything wrong. Just be associated with a piece of shit.
Yeah, and trust somebody who he thought he could trust. Bill Bradfield, because he was, the person at the center of this, being Susan Reinert's alleged fiance, delivered the first and only public statement he ever made in this whole mess regarding Susan Reinert's murder. Again, this is the only thing he has ever acknowledged about her death publicly, and he didn't even deliver it, Caitlin. He wrote it down and had another teacher read it at the meeting because he is disgusting.
Well, he's an English teacher. He's a writer.
Ugh. As you are all aware, over the summer and our school, and some of us in particular, have been mentioned in the press in regard to the tragic death of Mrs. Susan Reinert. Because of this, my effectiveness in the position of the president-elect is in serious question to the point of my considering resignation, even though I have not been charged with any wrongdoing, and have indeed been told that I am not even a suspect. I want to assure you that I had nothing to do with Mrs. Reinert's death, and that I have no idea as to the whereabouts of her children. I also want to assure you that I am doing everything I can in order to bring this matter to a speedy and just resolution.
Okay. But allegedly you do know what happened, and allegedly you could help resolve everything because you knew what was going to happen. You knew who was going to kill her.
Yeah, exactly.
Eh.
The students, meanwhile, constantly discussed among themselves who, between Dr. J and Bill Bradfield and their various colleagues, who were what they called the closet killers and cult leaders. Bill and Vince were sent to shuffle papers at an abandoned elementary school owned by the district, and something about the isolation and Bill woefully comparing himself to Job caused Vince to finally snap. And claps for Vince. He apparently grabbed Bill's calendar off his desk, slung it across the room. That's probably the most violent thing he ever did in his life.
He's like,
yeah.
just set it down.
Take that.
I'm sorry.
He picked it back up again and dusted it off. But he let Bill have it for A, not going to the police, B, telling Vince that he wasn't allowed to go to police, and C, by the way, Vince had been going to the police for that entire summer, in fact, ever since Susan Reinert's memorial. Upon learning this, Bill flew into an outrage. He accused Vince of betraying him and wanting to see him fry in the electric chair again like he did before, like, you put me in the electric chair. Then he stormed out of their tiny office and didn't return again for 6 weeks. The reason he gave to the school board was that he had an inner ear infection. And when he did return, he wouldn't so much as acknowledge Vince. Mind you, the man we've been talking about Bill and Vince this whole time. He'd been saying Vince was his best friend in the whole world.
Narcissist.
Just
the minute Vince turned on him and he was like, I can no longer control you.
The minute Vince grew a spine. Yeah. And poor Vince, Bill Bradfield and Susan Myers, Chris Pappas, they were really his best and only friends in the world. And he fell into a depression so deep from missing teaching and making Bill Bradfield angry that he set up a cot in the basement of the school and started sleeping there because he didn't even want to go home.
Yeah.
Just so sad.
Because he lived in the same apartment complex as them.
Yeah. Bill could not have given less of a shit. And for the rest of that winter and into the spring of 1980, he shuffled papers and went about his business like nothing had happened.
And while the search for the missing children had turned up nothing, the search for that pesky missing $25,000 had, and law enforcement could feel themselves closing in on Bill. Basically, lots of good old-fashioned police work had uncovered the following. Among Susan Reinert's personal belongings, they found a receipt that showed her as purchasing 25% of a $100,000 6-month certificate from an unnamed investment bank. But when detectives looked up the names of the investment brokers, a Mr. E.S. Parrott and a Mr. M.E. McEvey, they didn't exist. Detectives asked Susan Reinert's brother, did they know what investment firm she'd gone through? No, he told them, just that she'd said it was one that Bill Bradfield had recommended to her. They also found receipts for cash withdrawals that Susan had made from her bank, 7 in total, $25,000 worth. And on her calendar, she'd marked every withdrawal date, along with the note, investment cash to B. I wonder who B is. And with that, detectives had their very own Tim Curry finding out that Kevin stole his dad's credit card in Home Alone moment. Aha.
Most satisfying aha moment of all time.
And then he got outsmarted by a child and movie.
Yes.
Bill had never invested a single dime of the $25,000 Susan had given him. He'd only given her a fake receipt. And the 6-month window where her certificate would have been due to be fully invested was rapidly closing. Dr. J. Smith was about to be in jail, Bill was thousands of dollars in debt, and instead of a romantic wedding and a large return on her investment, Susan was about to find out that Bill was bogus. His 3 options were to kill Susan, marry her, or tell her the truth, break up with her, and return her $25,000.
I can guarantee you it wasn't the last one.
Nah, I don't think so. That's too much. That's too hard.
Yeah.
When detectives laid out this information to the Philadelphia district attorney, it was too compelling for him not to order that Bill appear for a hearing. And they would do so under the guise that a thorough inquiry into Susan Reinert's will was being done just to make sure every T was crossed and I dotted. For a full year, Bill had managed to evade every line of questioning through lawyering up. But a hearing about money, not a criminal trial, might be their one shot to slip him up. Their one clear task was to get Bill to admit that he, at any point, had been in personal possession of that $25,000, without catching on that they had all the receipts proving his theft and deception under their table. Literally.
Mm-hmm.
That would warrant an arrest, open the door for a trial, and ensure that Bill was in cuffs while they built a case against him for triple homicide.
Mm-hmm.
The hearing lasted for hours, during which Bill Bradfield either flat out lied or denied every question of him regarding his relationship with Susan Reinert and her money.
Oh my God.
I hate him.
When I read through this hearing deposition or whatever you want to call it, it is maddening as a reader just of how infuriating he is at every question. He's just like, no, I never told her that. No, I didn't know she had this money. No, I didn't say we were getting it. No. And every time he tells a lie or he denies, though, the two detectives are like trying not to smile, and they're like, don't make eye contact, because then we're like, check.
Us in
Yes.
any serious situation. Don't make eye contact. Oh my gosh.
They're I just think every time he says something moronic, I just imagine that
They're,
they
like,
were
high-fiving underneath the table.
100%. Oh, that had to be so satisfying. Like, gotcha, bitch.
Dumbass.
So, as reports of the hearing came trickling out of the courthouse, one particular individual sat in front of his TV with his mouth frozen open in horror and visions swimming in his mind of wiping fingerprints off piles of money with Bill Bradfield. Chris Papas.
Now, see, I see the one meme of Leonardo DiCaprio.
No.
Snapping.
There. 1,000%.
shit.
Oh. The following morning, Chris sat with his head in his hands at his own kitchen table, along with two detectives, resigned to finally break the confidence of someone he'd chosen to believe was his friend and a good person all the way up until now. So, in addition to the $25K incident, which Chris told them about in detail, he also gave detectives some very bizarre and troubling stories regarding Bill and Dr. J. Smith. Bill apparently had told Chris, like he did with Vince, the same stuff about Dr. Smith claiming to be a mafia hitman, chopping up bodies and dissolving them in acid, but that to get in with Dr. Smith and earn his trust, he had assumed a teacher and pupil relationship with him. Dr. Smith would show Bill things like how he could tie chains around people's wrists a certain way to make it more easy to suspend and torture them. And then Bill had literally pulled out a chain from his jacket pocket and been like, hey, Chris, let me show you what he means, and like demonstrated it on him.
No.
Yeah, no, you're not putting that around me. Right now, police were again side-eyeing each other, and they pulled out photographs of chains and locks that had been taken in the basement of Jay Smith's house. And they asked Chris if he recognized them. Chris, I just imagine Chris being like, oh, for fuck's sake. Chris stood up, rummaged around in his house for a bit, and came back presenting detectives with a brown paper bag. Inside the bag were 2 locks identical to the ones in their photos, a ski mask, a box of bullets, and a recording device, all of which Bill had given him for safekeeping. And the recording device he said he wanted to have in case he needed to record his and Dr. Smith's conversation so that he could prove he was a nut.
Nah.
Yeah. Nah. And again, it just is like the naivete of Chris Papas and Vince Valaitis that
Get that out of my house.
I know. I'm like, what in the damn
Like, if
hell?
you are telling the truth that he's a part of the mafia,
Yeah.
I don't care what you have to say. Do not talk to me about it.
No,
like,
yeah.
you go be buddies with him.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Get your shit out of my house.
Don't give me shit to hang on to.
Uh-uh.
Now, as far as the one person we haven't really mentioned this episode, Susan Myers, went, Bill Bradfield's longtime live-in girlfriend, she was really the final link in what Bill Bradfield clearly had believed was his little unbreakable alibi chain for that weekend. And it took her almost exactly 1 full year. But like Chris Papas, after that hearing, she could no longer talk herself out of the red flags that she had been trying so hard to deny since Susan Reinert's murder. In her very first sit down with police, they expressed grave concern for her that Susan Myers herself could very well be Bill's next victim. So that day, she went home, changed the locks on her and Bill's apartment, and told Bill over the phone he could go live with his parents. Yes, Queen, she did not even let him in to get his stuff. Ugh. Bill would later say in an interview that Susan Myers, Caitlin, she just didn't have, quote, the psychological toughness to resist law enforcement authority. But tough Susan Myers was in the way that mattered. She told police everything about Bill's money troubles, the loans he'd taken out, the failing store, the thousands of dollars in debt, and how she discovered in Bill's filing cabinet the last will and testament of Susan Reinert. Remember, he said he didn't know anything about a will. She told them about the letters she'd found between Bill and Susan, and Joanne Atkin, and Wendy Ziegler. And finally, in June of 1981, so a full year after Susan Reinert's body is found, there was a knock at the door of the home of the elderly Mr. and Mrs. Bradfield. One look at the sharp gray suits and badges of the 2 men on her doorstep, 75-year-old Nonna Bradfield let out a resigned sigh and opened her door.
It sounds like Nonna knew who her son was.
Well, Nonna had actually spent the first few decades of her son's life praying that one day he would become a preacher. But today, he was due to be fingerprinted and photographed at the Delaware County Prison.
Tell him, Jen. Tell him.
Forgive me. Forgive me. It's going to be a 4-parter because I have to talk about everything. I have to tell you guys everything.
Yeah, there's a lot. There really isn't an episode's worth of the possibilities. Because like we said in the very beginning, Michael and Karen have never been found. So the theories regarding them, as you can already tell from what's been going on, there's no evidence, linking Bill or Dr. J. Smith to the murder of Susan Reinert. So,
nor has Bill or Dr. J been charged with anything relating to the murder. But this is also why I wanted to talk about this in such detail, is that I find the process so fascinating that these detectives and the FBI, they were like, this is our guy, but we're going to take our hunch, we're going to put it on the shelf, and we're going to get him on something that is what we know we can get him on while he gets put under pressure. We're going to get him to crack, we're going to get him to slip about the money, and we're going to keep doing that, and we're going to get him for the murder. And that to me is just good dang policing. And I also find it so darkly fascinating that the hold that he had on these people, Bill Bradfield, was so absolute that it took them this long to go to police. And when they did, it was like the floodgates opened. It was like there was no, the police didn't have to drag it out of Susan Myers, Vince Fallacious, Chris Pappas.
That's terrifying.
They were genuinely just like, well, we can't throw our dear friend Bill under the bus.
Because to them, the Bill that he painted himself out to be was, like, that's him. That's who they knew.
Yeah. And he's been telling them in different ways that he's isolated them and gotten them in a position where he thinks that he's got them to do his bidding. They're believing that he is being targeted by police, that he is in danger. And what are you going to do but not try to protect your friend? So I am so glad, though, that it just shows at their core who they really are, that they were like, even though it took them a bit, that they had their like, oh shit moment.
Yeah.
Where they're like, he actually isn't the person he's been saying he is. Let me tell you.
I'm telling you, that is one of my biggest fears, is like somebody close to me, that happening. That's sickening to me.
That somebody was like sinisterly planning and plotting, and that you were a chess piece in their game.
You have to rewire your whole brain like cope with that.
It gives me like a pit in my stomach just to think about it. I mean, like, nobody is perfect. People make mistakes. People have secrets. Like, that's just the way that life is. But this level of diabolical, sadistic manipulation that's purely for your own benefit. I mean, just like a wreckage of people that this man is fine with destroying. For what? For what? So that he can get a boat?
And then to just like, you spent 9 months like losing sleep and truly becoming erratic to warn others of her death. She dies. Her kids are missing.
Yeah.
You couldn't care you could not care less.
How old were they? Oh, they were not. Oh, yeah, I met them once or twice. That poor lady.
Yeah.
Voodoo doll, Bill Bradfield. I mean, he already in hell, but...
Yeah, he did. In case y'all didn't know. But there's still more to discuss in part 4.
Yes, there's a little bit more forensic stuff we're going to get into, and a deep dive into the theories and possibilities about where Karen and Michael could possibly be. And
so with that, let us know what you guys think so far, what you guys think the possibilities are in the next episode.
Yep. To what extent do you think Bill Bradfield was involved?
Yeah.
That Dr. Smith was involved? Together? Apart? We're going to get into more of that in the final part. I swear, the final.
Hey, you guys would hate this if we just did a brief, like once over. You guys can do that by Googling.
I tried to copy and paste some bullet points just to wrap it up, that we could be like, Caitlin, I'll just talk through it and it'll just be over. It'll be done. And then I was like, no, I can't do it. I can't do it.
There's so much.
We've been on a journey and we're going to finish it.
With you guys.
Yes. So with that, the world, especially when Bill Bradfield was living in it, 1970s Upper Marion, is an absolutely terrifying place. So always remember to have courage and stay kind.
Bitch. Bye.